The following is a long, open-ended conversation with Alia Alsagoff, head of online sales at PostCredit, one of the five digital banking license recipients in Malaysia. We got the opportunity to discuss many topics, like how important are the skills of product management and the immediate effect in the fintech industry. We also chat about the challenges that many digital banks have in Southeast Asia. We joke around about the adventures that Alia had across Malaysia, Australia, and New Zealand. And more important, we discuss about the meaning of Merdeka, which means independence in Malay. If you like this, feel free to like and subscribe and to support the channel in the description below. And now, your featured presentation. 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Long with FVR. Today we have Alia. Thanks for joining us.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Oh yes, this is a very unusual place because usually it's floor 29, but now we are in floor 32.
Yeah.
So, long story short, for some reason, I don't know when, there is like a fire drill, and they decide everybody moves to floor 32.
That's right.
So it's like right now we are enjoying the view. Well, not you who are on the other side, but eventually you will see something. So how have you been?
I've been good. It's been 2.5 months since I've joined Boost Credit. It's been an exciting ride. Fabian has been here throughout the process as well. So looking forward to sharing more of our experience with you.
Oh yes, that's true. One of the things that people may want to know is like a little more about yourself.
Sure.
So can you tell people who are watching this who is Alia?
Sure, great. So hi everybody. My name is Alia. I've been born and bred in Malaysia since 32 years now of my life. I started my career, I suppose, in 2014. Graduated from University of Melbourne, came back on a scholarship from a local telco company called Maxis Berhad. Started my 4-year starting of my career there. I was in their graduate training program for about 2 years, road hitting across different parts of the business. Where did I start? Call center. Then I ended up in their retail storefront, understanding the product, understanding the customers, understanding how to serve their needs and what are the common pain points, objection handling and the sort. From there, I spent another 6 months in the IT department, working as a business analyst, becoming sort of like the bridge between the business side of things, the product managers who have all kinds of things they want to roll out to members of the public like you and me, consumers, and then also working together with the existing tech resources, your engineers, your front end and your back end developers to really set up the product structure correctly and bringing that to market. Fast forward another 6 months, I ended up in the finance department under the business planning division. I found that to be quite interesting, not only because I had pretty interesting mentors, but also because I got to work on a lot of the mobile virtual network operator contracts, which just means in layman terms, let's say tomorrow you wake up and you decide, okay, I want to run a new telecommunications company in Malaysia, but you don't have any money to build your own towers. No matter, you can collaborate with existing telcos like Maxis, ride on their network, and get charged a certain fee by Maxis, and then you take that fee and you mark it up and then you make your profit with zero upfront capital to build, capital expenditure to build your towers. So I went in finance, I was in IT, I was in the front line, and then the final 6 months of my graduate trainee, career, I ended up in a team called distribution management under the sales and service vertical. That was pretty interesting as well. I spent about 6 months working with their manager, looking at all of the distributors in Malaysia that's selling telco top-ups for your prepaid cards. They had physical top-ups, they had mobile top-ups, and they were just launching, this was in 2015, towards the end of 2015, where they were launching mobile prepaid top-ups where a dealer could just SMS, hey Fabian, you're my customer, you want to pay 10 ringgit to get credit? Just give me the 10 ringgit, give me your phone number, I'll just SMS it to you. Or if you're using an app, I can immediately top it up into your app for you. So that was essentially my first 2 years in Maxis. After the graduate training program, I ended up as a product manager with the enterprise division. I was basically working on all non-telco related products. So think of tech products such as mobile point of sale, so a typical credit card terminal that you could bring to your events if you're hosting like a Meals on Wheels, or if you're having a pop-up store in different malls every weekend. All you need is this little mobile device that has a Maxi SIM card linked into it. Your customers tap their debit card or their credit cards and you get money straight away. I also looked into other peripheral products like point of sale services. So think of a cashier service that's all based on the cloud. So that was initially how I started my career, a little bit of a background of Alia and how she started her product management journey.
Wow. So cashier on the cloud is something just right now joining. That sounds a little fancy, but that will be one of the main applications of financial technology, right?
Exactly.
And you mentioned that at the beginning it was something that can be maybe into the finance or information technology, but through that journey you get into product management and FinTech. Uh, Tell us a little more how you began to realize this is something that can build upon.
Cool. So in that space of my career, when I was looking into retail solutions, we called it the retail solutions portfolio. The kind of target market that we're thinking about was the SME retailer. SME just stands for small medium enterprise. Think of your small business owners. They don't have franchise businesses, they don't have big branches, but they have a very pure heart and soul, and they want to serve their community, be it in F&B line, food and beverage, or even in the retail scene, right? And we started looking at areas where, hey, they're actually generating profits, or they're generating transactions that's being captured by these point of sale systems, by these credit card terminals. But no one is able to capitalize yet at that time on the data generated from them to look at it and say, hey, if you're profitable at this rate, could I then help you improve and boost your cash flow and directly improve your business growth by providing you with financial services and solutions like a simple advanced cash loan or simple access to working capital financing, which now, fast forward 8 years into my working career, 9 years into my working career at Boost Credit, that's exactly the kind of data and exactly the kind of products that we are trying to achieve to help serve the underserved, people who may typically get turned away from banks because they're too small to matter to them. But to us at Boost Credit, no business is too small, and that's a solution that we have for everyone here. So that's typically how I think the products have evolved into becoming more than just a transactional tool to now becoming a tool for your business growth as well.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I remember a quote in the late 90s that software is eating the world. This is like an application that is not only eating the world but also helping include more and more people. Maybe some of you already saw the previous episodes we discussed with some friends who did their internship at the Alliance for Financial Inclusion. And they have been also telling that FinTech itself is a tool that helps them to go and serve the underserved. As you mentioned, serve the underserved, through the early experience I got here at Boost, I realized that data itself can be an asset. From your point of view, how the assets like data can help you improve whatever you're doing?
I love this question, especially when it's coming from Fabian, because he is, to me, a super expert in data, in using data, in actually extracting value from that data. So I like that question about how is data actually valuable to a business today. So in Malaysia, there are a lot of legacy companies that's been around for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and even more, right? They've been around for a long time. They've potentially had some systems that are tracking data, whether it's transaction, whether it's customer data, whether it's product-related utilization data across their entities. However, not many are fully extracting the most value out of it. There's a common saying in people who are dealing with data, and so data scientists. Data is only as useful as you make it to be. It's only as valuable as much as you extract from it. There's no point having data of the billions of people that we have in the world, but not acting on it, not doing anything with it. Here at Boost Credit, and with the help of Fabian, what we've really done is to look at the customer segments that we're serving today. when it comes to underserved, who are they? Who are the ones that need the products that we have the most? What kind of segments are attracted to what kind of products? What is their typical life cycle like? What is their profile? What is their income? When you start having a lot of data points, you can start looking at trends. So one area that Fabian has helped us with is also looking at trends, looking at where are customers based, and is there a pattern in terms of the size of the loan, or is there a pattern in terms of the size of the companies that's taking on the loan? With this data, you now have the power to understand your segment, understand what products are the best for them, and from there, you use this information to develop more products to enhance on the foundational product that you have today and make those products more personalized and more valuable to each segment that we're targeting. And this is just one small section of the tip of the iceberg that we can extract value from data. There's a lot more that I wish I could share, but I hope this gives you an idea of what you could do with the vast mine of data that perhaps each of you have access to in your day-to-day.
Now that you mentioned about the data and the slivers, that it's like an onion that once you peel, then you realize there are more and more layers. Some people may already saw the news of what happened in April, that in the place that you are right now, they happen to get a license. And for some reason, the name of the game and also the rules of the game are changing. How is that influencing nowadays your daily activities?
Right, so I think the license that Fabian is talking about, at least at Boost Credit, we've recently in April been awarded a digital banking license from Bank Negara Malaysia, which is our central bank. There are 5 players in total, including Boost, that has gotten access to this, and it always goes back to and making sure that we can empower financial inclusion for all businesses, for all Malaysians. It doesn't matter how small or how big you are, but with a special emphasis on the underserved segment, as I've mentioned earlier. The typical segments who may not be registered with a business license, but they are running businesses and they are no less legitimate than one that is registered, perhaps because they're just too small and they're not aware of such licenses available to them to register. And because of that, the traditional banks or the traditional financial institutions today have certain guidelines to provide financing solutions, but those guidelines are very much tweaked and developed based on, again, legacy rules and criteria. So I think the role that Boost Credit and also the other future digital banking players can come into the picture and offer our value, which is to take the same products but look at it through a different lens. Are there potential areas that we can derive income proxies if you're not registered as a business owner? Are there areas that we can look at to identify your profile and where you're based in creative ways that is different and more innovative compared to what has traditionally been done in Malaysia? And what that really means for Boost Credit is to ensure that we're able to provide, again, a lot of value to this specific segment that has traditionally always been too small to matter, or traditionally has always been ignored by perhaps the bigger players in the market. And it's like what people say, areas that are underserved will typically be seen as blue ocean areas, right? Where not many people are playing in because there are certain constraints or maybe difficulties in reaching them. Infrastructure is also one area which is a high consideration. And what I mean by that is, put yourselves in the shoes of someone who is perhaps living below the poverty line. You might not have access to a mobile device. You might not have, you may be living in an area that does not have internet infrastructure. But nevertheless, you still have the same financial needs as those living in urban or city areas. So how then could players like Boost and other financial institutions play a bigger role into supporting your growth, supporting your financial literacy, and also supporting your financial needs? And I think that's really just the starting point for all of us here.
Absolutely, because this is something that right now is going, the actual fight, the current fight between the old money, which is the banks, the traditional players in the financial system, and the neo banks, the DJ banks that right now are going in Southeast Asia. Places like Singapore, Hong Kong, and now Malaysia, they are understanding that it's not only to serve the underserved, but also to reach as much people as possible. I remember that one of the main things that was a game changer was how to be more inclusive into the Islamic finance. And this is something I realized that when you do things like the wakala, like the zakat or sadaqah, people that know the terms, they know what it means. Hey, you're reaching a lot more people. Malaysia itself, like, it has 60% of their population is Muslim, and they want a product that appeals to them. So all of a sudden, you untap a new market if you come from a traditional banking system, and you can get not only customers but also getting more access. Transformation of lives is something that you realize that can be done. Talking about transformation of lives, you mentioned at the beginning that you spent some time in a place called Melbourne.
Melbourne, yeah.
So tell us a little more. Where is Melbourne, and what kind of impact it had on you?
Sure. Melbourne is a state, or sorry, it's the capital of a state in Australia called Victoria. The impact that it had on me, I would say it goes back to, I'll tell you a little funny story of how I ended up in Melbourne. So I have been educated in the traditional schools in Malaysia. My high school was in a government school. Everyone wore the same uniforms. Everybody goes to the same classes. And it's very regimented in the sense that discipline is number one. Everybody goes through the same thing. There is no special treatment or preferential treatment or even customizing your route of study. Very, very different from what happened to me in university. So I've always wanted to gain access to quality education. I feel that education is the easiest way or the cornerstone of helping someone get out of poverty. So I thought if I could get access to quality education, I could get way better standard of living, better access to good careers, and hopefully one day give it back to future young talents as well, right? Or other communities that I'm privileged to support. When I was in high school, I was not incentivized to perform well on my exams. I don't know, for whatever reason, I was just very much into games. I loved gaming. Even today, I love playing games. And I just felt that going to school with this whole regimented way of learning, there was no, at least from where I went to school, education and what we learned in school was not fun at all. You just had someone going to the classroom every day, opening up the textbook and literally just reading stuff from it, or writing notes on the chalkboard, and everyone, we use chalk, not even markers, no laptops in schools, literally white chalk. So they'll write the day's lessons and the week's lessons on the board, and everyone has an exercise book where we're expected to copy every single thing. So your role as a student was not to really engage with the learning material, but just to copy, memorize, wait for the exam to come, and then just regurgitate everything back on paper. Not really a fun way to learn, right? And to me, at least personally, I don't think that is the best way to actually measure whether the student actually understands the material, but that's how it was, at least during my time. So we have this exam when we finish high school. It is to help gauge whether you can enter into a tertiary education, aka university in Malaysia. I did pretty poorly in that exam. I got like 2 A's and everything else was B because I was just too depressed to like continue studying in this kind of methodology. But I still wanted access to quality education, you see. So I went to my parents and I said, hey, mom and dad, I would like to go to a private university in Subang Jaya, Malaysia. It's called either Taylor's University or Sunway University. Those were one of the two universities I was considering at the time. And my parents said, no, we can't afford such expensive education. Why don't you go and apply to join they call it IPTA, which in English it just stands for public universities that's subsidized by the government. And I said, oh no, public university, it's going to be the same as my public high school where, the same method of rote learning, you come to class, someone reads from the textbook, and then the Q&A session also is just based on whatever is in your textbook. There's no strong lecturer that came from the industry that can actually make the learning materials very exciting for you to even consider that as a career, right? Beyond just your exams. So that happened to me. Went to the public university, finished 3 years with distinction because the place that I studied is on the east coast of Malaysia. It's called Terengganu. There's no access to internet at the time. So there was no distractions because I can't play online games. There's no games on site. It was just university, and after classes, you just go to the beach because that's the only thing that's there. Relax by the beach, rinse and repeat every day again. So 3 years after my diploma at this university, I did really well. And again, I asked my parents, hey, I would like to again explore getting access to quality private education in Malaysia for my degree. And again, my parents said, no, it's really too expensive. Why don't you try applying for a scholarship? So I said, okay, let's see what scholarships are available. Unfortunately, my university, where I took my diploma, our exams finish way beyond all the other local universities, which meant that most of the scholarships, the window for application was already closed by the time I got my results, right? Which left me with only two options. One was from Maxis, and the other one is from Khazanah, Malaysia. So then I said, okay, well, what the heck, let's just try and see what happens. I didn't have high expectations, but I still wanted quality education, so I begged my parents. I said, is there any way we can maybe apply for a loan to get me to Melbourne? Apply for Australian universities with my grades. I got a few invitations, but then to accept those invitations, it cost a hefty sum. Like in Melbourne University, for example, 1 whole year's worth of studies would cost around, at the time, about 33,000 Australian dollars. That's like, at the time, about more than 100,000 ringgit per year. Not a small sum at all, especially not for my parents. So we went to some financial institutions to try and get a loan. I got one of it approved. It's conditional. If I can get good grades, then they will discount the interest that I would have to pay back. So I said, okay, I'm set. Thank you so much, parents, for supporting me. I'm on my way to Melbourne. In my first week of being in the uni, as I applied for all the scholarships, I went for interviews. I got to the final stage with Maxis. And about 4 to 5 days into my first week at Melbourne Uni, I got an email saying that, oh, congratulations, you're selected as one of our, I think it was like 10 scholars that managed to go overseas. We'll fully fund your education. I swear to God, in that moment, I just cried my eyes out and said, wow, this is the beginning that would change my life trajectory. So that was how I ended up in Melbourne. I would always treasure those 3 years I spent there doing my university degree, because I made sure that rule number 1, I wanted access to quality education and I got it. Number 2, I got a bonus on top of that, which is also exposing myself to a new country, just like what Fabian is doing right now. So I made it a point to not just mingle with the same people, with Asians. I want to make it a point to really embrace the local culture, the local customs, try the food. Australians love their barbecues and they love drinking. I don't drink, I'm Muslim by the way, but I do join them in pubs and clubs, and just to talk to them and understand what is being a Melbourneian all about. What do you guys like doing? Do you like touch rugby? Do you like playing frisbee? So I really immersed myself in that whole journey, and I think it helped make life a lot more interesting, because university is not just about studying, memorizing, and just vomiting back out everything you learn. The course materials and the lecturers are actually taught by people who have spent 10, 20 years in the industry, so they can give you real world examples. They even help you network with potential recruiters in Melbourne, and even the exam questions that they set. It's completely a different experience for me, because in Malaysia, the way exams are written, it's something like how they give you sample questions in the textbook. They may just change the names of the identities of the people in this question, and maybe they change a few figures, but largely the format is the same. But in Melbourne, I'm sure in MIT where you're at, and also other universities abroad, the kind of questions you will never find an easy sample to copy it from, because the way it's drafted, it tests your understanding of the material more than just, if you can vomit out formulas. It's important that you know how to use formulas and you know how to apply what you've learned to show and demonstrate that you understand the learning material. And that was an eye-opener for me on the education side of things. On the personal and life side of things, I really enjoyed my 3 years exploring cafes. I worked there as well to gain some pocket money to go and travel. I traveled every single chance I got, and I think it helped me have a better sense of what it's like to be human, what it's like to learn, and what it's like to give back to the community. So that's my story.
That's impressive because it was your relentless pursuit of quality education that allowed you to not only go overseas but also to go beyond what a person can experience. This reminds me a quote from Imran Yusuf, who was on episode 11. He is also Muslim, and he mentioned a nice quote. I had to say verbatim that don't let your faith constrain you to enjoy life while you are here, which is important because, I mean, all of a sudden from the traditional conservative Malaysia way to the very liberal Australian, Melbourneian, in Victoria, you name it.
Yeah.
You see life.
Yeah.
And then you can tell other people, oh, nobody here or nobody told me. I saw it with the eyes, and this is important because this is something I also want to share with everybody through the podcast. Like, the world is so different, and it's always good to keep account of what other people can tell you from different sources, different places, which is the human experience in itself.
Yep, spot on.
That's right. And now that you have been in Melbourne and you went to other places, which was the place that on that journey that caught your attention the most?
This is an interesting one because this place that captured my attention the most, I would have to say it is actually New Zealand instead of Australia, even though I spent 3 years of my education in Australia. Reason being, in my last semester of studying, I was looking forward to planning an epic trip to close off my university years, simply because I knew that I had a job waiting for me when I come back to Malaysia, and you will never experience life the same way when you're a working adult versus when you're a university student with long semester breaks, with no family and no children to think about, right? The world is your oyster. It is still your oyster when you start working, but there are different constraints and freedoms that you get to work with, specifically at that point in your lives. So for me, I decided I'm gonna have an epic final close off to my Australian years to travel in New Zealand. So I had this massive plan. I went out and created an itinerary for 2 whole weeks, and I invited a bunch of friends just to come along with me. And at the start of the semester, everyone seemed to be very excited. I had like 5 friends at least who said, yeah, we'll tag along, let's do it. And closer and closer towards the end of the semester, all these 5 friends started fizzling out, as you know, some of you may experience trying to plan a road trip with multiple people. And in the end, everyone said, oh, sorry, we have other plans. Some will say, oh no, I don't have the budget. Some will say, oh, I have other things planned, or I don't think I want to spend 2 weeks on a road trip, and just all kinds of excuses. And I said, okay, no pressure. This is something that I really, really want. And when I want something and I've planned for it, I will go all out to actually finish it up and follow through with it. So I said, that's it. I'm just going to book this whole trip, and it's going to be, instead of a group trip, it is now going to be a solo trip. So I planned, I booked it.
Time out.
Yeah.
So let's put the perspective first. So a Muslim woman from Malaysia, that has been the first years outside the country, going in Australia, and decides to go to New Zealand. Now that you get the picture, she's doing a solo travel. So what did you see in New Zealand?
Great question. Let me tell you what happened the minute I landed in New Zealand. So at the time, Instagram was just coming out. I started posting a picture. I made it, my first solo trip of my life at the age of, how old was I? 22, let's do this. And I went. First thing I get is a call on WhatsApp, which is a text messenger service here in Malaysia, from my whole family. Alia, what are you doing? Solo trip in New Zealand. Are you crazy? Where are you staying? What is your whole itinerary? How long will you be in New Zealand for? Who are you there with? Share me all these details, right? My parents have never had anyone in the family travel alone before. So this is a huge alarm bells ringing in their head. Oh my god! And my grandma is crying. She's like, oh my god, my eldest grandchild is going to travel on her own. It's so reckless. Is she going to be safe? Why is she going on this dangerous trip? So imagine that multiplied by everyone in my family, right? So I just told them, everyone, relax. I've rented a car. This is my itinerary. This is what I'm going to do. I have enough money saved up from my working experience over the last 3 years in Melbourne. And I will be staying sometimes in youth hostels, sometimes in my car in a trailer park. I literally brought like blankets and everything, pillows, etc. with me. Obviously layers of winter clothing because when I went to New Zealand it was winter. So my parents said, no, absolutely not. You're not going to be staying in your car and trailer parks. If you want to remain in New Zealand and you don't want us to book a flight ticket and come there right now, you are going to book a youth hostel accommodation for every single night of your trip. So I said, geez, that's gonna burn like another 20% of my budget, but okay, for your peace of mind, so that you don't have to fly here and ruin my holiday, I will book YHA youth hostels for you, and here's the proof of my booking. And that's essentially what happened when I landed the first day in New Zealand.
Wow. They were more law enforcing than actually immigration.
Yeah.
Wow. And you had a plan to actually, the idea to spend some time in those trailer parks. From the perspective that I've seen in Texas, in other places, believe it or not, those can be the safest places because the trailer drivers, the least thing they want to do is to be into more trouble because the schedule is very tight. It's so tight they barely have time to sleep. But of course, there are going to be, let's say, places that I would say when you are a little far from the internet or a little far from the basic services can be some of a factor. So I guess in a good way, it was a way.
Yeah.
I can see it from there. So we know that after the call you got to reduce your budget for other things. But what else did you see?
Yeah. So on one of the days of my travel, obviously in New Zealand, one major attraction of the whole country is the fact that it's beautiful, people are amazing, the locals are fantastic, all very friendly. One of the things I saw when I was driving initially was mountains, lots of mountains, and I thought they were snow-capped mountains because it was winter, right? And then I realized that the snow was moving. And I was thinking, why is the snow moving on those mountains? As I got closer, I realized there were sheep. There were sheep everywhere. And if you know a fun fact about New Zealand, the population of sheep is greater than the population of humans in that country. So that was very interesting. A second point that I found to be very interesting was I went for a cultural village tour to understand the local Maori people, how they live, how their cultures have, I suppose, blended into the societies, how New Zealander locals have also assimilated to their cultures. There's a lot of words from the Maorian vocabulary that have been brought into the New Zealand everyday language. There is also a special handshake that the Maori people have, where you shake their hands and they will pull the person's forehead and nose close to them. I don't remember what it's called now, but they shake hands, put the forehead close to each other and take one breath. So that to them is a sign of a shared breath and strong relationship with each other. We also saw them use a special traditional method of cooking meats rice in an underground sort of like a cavity. They'll dig it out under volcanic soil. They'll dig it out, it's very hot, put their meats in, cover it up again for about 2 to 3 hours, take it back up. It's like a natural pressure cooker. And the food tasted amazing. All the meat just came off the bones, like fantastic. So first was snow-capped mountains moving. Second was Maori local culture. The third was an interesting, I suppose, meeting I had with an Australian traveller who happened to be there. She was making friends in the youth hostel, and this was in a place called Wanaka in New Zealand, South Island. Beautiful lake Wanaka. Met her and a few people. When you're staying in a youth hostel, there's typically a lot of communal spaces, from the toilets to even the kitchen and cooking area. So we were cooking, and she said, "What are you making?" And I said, "A smoked salmon burger with some of the things I bought on sale at the supermarket." And she's like, "Oh, that looks great." And I said, "Would you like to have one?" She said, "Sure." So I shared my food with her and started understanding where she's from and how she's in New Zealand for a month just to ski and enjoy life. And she asked me, "Where are you going tomorrow?" And I said, "According to my itinerary, I should be going to the next town that's nearby." And she said, "Oh, but it'll be so sad. We just got to know each other. I wish I could spend more time with you. If you can stay for another day, I would like to invite you to a chill out session at a friend's house. We're just having beer and just going there to talk about life and relax and meeting new people." So I said, that's interesting. I've never actually been invited by a complete stranger to go to their house and just to relax, chit-chat and meet a lot of other travelers. So I said, "Okay, I'm down for that. I'll extend another day at Wanaka and let's go meet these new friends of yours." Most people would tell me, at least in Malaysia, because we're a very conservative country, they'll say, "Alia, you're crazy. You just met this person, you have no idea you know where she's from, but you don't know her as a person. What if you got kidnapped that night? What if someone were to rob you that night? What if something worse happens, you know? You're a Muslim girl going into these places, you don't know what will happen." But for me, it's not just about, embracing danger and just jumping right into the fire, but knowing who to call, your emergency contacts, making sure the places you go are safe in a public space, that you can call 999 emergency anytime, right? So naturally you put certain precautions in place before you go to places like this. And that's what I did. And that's why I was comfortable going with her as well, because I had spent beyond that initial dinner that we had. I spent the next whole day with her, and I've assessed that, yes, this person is quite normal, right? Not a potential serial killer or the like, at least on the surface. So I decided to go with her that night. Went to this, I suppose you'd call it like a bungalow. It had like lots of rooms, but we all gathered in the living room. People were just drinking beer, some were smoking weed, and everyone was just from different parts of the world talking about life, talking about where they're from. One of them I remember is a person who just loves skiing. He's a ski instructor and he's from America. And he just travels to different parts of the world whenever it's winter, because he says he cannot imagine his life without skiing. So 365 days a year, that's all he's doing. He's just skiing, right? So there's all kinds of different people, and I felt that it was really interesting meeting them and understanding what they do. Why do they do what they do? And to be honest, it was just fun meeting people that I would never have met or experienced meeting being here in corporate Malaysia, for example. So they show me that there's really more to life than just studying, getting a good job. Here, at least where I'm from, in Malaysia, Singapore, if you have any other Malaysian or Singaporean friends, you can ask them this. The traditional Asian method of parenting, as a parent, all you need to do is make sure you have enough money to send your kids to university and make sure that once they graduate, they have a good career as a professional, either as a doctor, lawyer, engineer. If your child has that as a career, they've succeeded. That is the measure of success, right? No one will talk to you about, "Hey, why don't you be a ski instructor for 365 days of the year and just do what's fun?" And I think in recent years, this has actually flipped on its head, at least in Malaysia and Singapore. I've heard when I visit family members during Chinese New Year, or we have Aidilfitri, Hari Raya here, and you just ask around. People in their teenage years or even in high school, you ask them, "What do you want to be?" A lot of them will come back and tell you, "I want to be a YouTuber." This is unheard of like 10 years ago. So that's really how New Zealand has shaped who I am today. Left that little special place in my mind and in my heart. Beautiful place, amazing people, even the travelers are nice, and it's just a nice slice of life experience that you gain for yourself, but also from other people's little life experiences.
It's fantastic because you can see the behavior of different people, like for some reason they feel safer with each other because they realize, you're one of us.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's bring it together. Let's chat. And also when you encounter the Maui, for people who are familiar with rugby, the All Blacks, because of the uniform, every time they have to play, they do this dance,
Yeah.
which is a way to not only honor but the rival, but also to say, if you're about to face us and we give you the best respect, but also it's gonna be serious.
Yeah.
So this is a little reference. So you actually met the original people who does this dance.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And the dance is called the haka.
The
If
haka.
you guys want to have a look at it. It's amazing on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's impressive. You were like 2 weeks there, or
Yeah, I spent a whole 2 weeks there, traveling from the North Island, took a ferry all the way to the south. There was even, I remember, one of the most dangerous parts of that trip was when I had to pass through, I don't remember the name of that road now, but it's entering towards Queenstown, which is one of the, I think, capital cities in South Island. That whole road was covered in ice, and the car which I had rented had something which they call snow tires, essentially snow chains that you put around your tires, but it was faulty. And regardless whether it wasn't even faulty, I had no idea how to put on that thing. Like, I'm from a tropical country, we don't see snow. What more do I know about putting this on and driving across an icy structure? So that day, I happened to be wearing a jacket. It said University of Melbourne on it. Got out of my car, looked at my snow chain, scratched my head, looked at the tires. Fortunately, there's a lot of fortunate incidents throughout this trip, yeah. There was another car in front of me with one driver and one passenger. They came out, put on their snow tires, and as they were about to leave, one of them stopped, saw me scratching my head, trying to figure out how to put this thingamajig on my tires, and said, "Hey, are you a student at Melbourne Uni? Do you need help putting on the snow tires?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, are you from Melbourne as well? I would really appreciate that. I have no idea what I'm doing." And the driver told this passenger, "Are you sure we have time for that? Because we're rushing to get to the airport." And this passenger says, "No, don't worry. I'll only take like 5 minutes. It won't take long. I'll make it fast." And the driver says, "Okay then." So the passenger helps me set up everything. And I told her, "Hey, before you leave, could I maybe get your phone number? I would love to treat you for coffee or lunch when we're back in Melbourne because you're really saving my life right here." And she says, "No, honestly, don't worry about it. I'm just trying to be a good Samaritan. Drive safe and enjoy the rest of your trip in New Zealand. Maybe we'll meet again." And I said, "Sure, please take care and I hope you get to your flight on time." And that was it, right? Very serendipitous. So these are a little life-changing moments that, people will always have certain perceptions. Oh, Malaysians, they're too conservative. Oh, Australians, they're very selfish. How do you know that every once in a while there's someone who would break that perception that you have? And it has taught me nothing but to keep my mind open to whoever and whatever experience I may meet, and never to prejudge a person before you understand them, to always try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, because more often than not, people would surprise you. I'm not saying everyone is good. There will be some people who, perhaps due to their own traumatic life experiences, it has made them who they are. But I don't believe that everyone was born wanting to do evil in the world. So yeah, have an open mind and just take care of yourself. And that was really interesting for me.
That's just a marvelous story, because for people who, I would say, the privilege to drive on ice,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it'd be dangerous. Like, you literally had to be like maybe 10 kilometers per hour, and you had to brake very, very slowly, because if you brake a little fast, then
Spin.
the car spins. And you had to be very firm, otherwise the little slide, and then you are going all the way in different direction. It can be a real test of driving skills, and also for the car itself, because it's getting too cold, then the fluids of the car, and
freeze,
then everything. And also when the windshield is moving,
yeah.
It's like you really want to pray that there is no water falling, otherwise there's going to be a lot of ice into this. It can be too dangerous. So I'm glad that happened to you, because I mean, that was I guess after that little track, I guess that it was downhill from there, right?
Yeah. So after that, thank goodness, no other further routes were covered in ice. It was just about half an hour to about an hour's drive, and beyond that, okay, no more ice. I could safely keep the chain, but because I am now removing the snow chains, I now understand how to set it up if I had to. So pay attention to the little things, because these things can really save your life one day.
Now, for the ones who are more into the car things, the motorheads, uh, what kind of car you were driving there?
Interesting question. So when I was trying to rent this car, I didn't have a lot of time to do this because, as I said, everyone who I initially wanted to plan this trip with cancelled last minute, and I couldn't get one of those Volkswagen big vans that you typically go on, tours in New Zealand. That was the whole dream. So the only place I could get under my budget from the New Zealand car rentals agency, and I was surprised that they told me, even though it's winter, usually they don't have a lot of tourists, but for that specific whole 2 weeks that I was planning to visit, all their cars were sold out. They only had one. How old was that car? Like an 8-year-old sedan. It was probably like an old Toyota Corolla or some sort of sedan like that. And that was all they had with snow chains. I decided to take the option that had insurance, just in case something happened to the car, whether accidental or not, right? At least I'm covered there. The last thing you want is to travel without a personal insurance, second insurance on the equipment that you're using if you're renting it, because if it's an expensive insurance and you're a student, you're definitely not gonna have enough money to buy them a new car if something happened to it. So yeah, it's just an ordinary sedan.
Wow. To cross that little thing on covered on ice with that sedan.
Yeah. Imagine it.
Yeah, I already saw that. I mean, like, okay, let's go back a little in time. Texans remember this very well. 2021, Valentine's Day, everything is happy, but we began to see, oh, look at that. It's about to snow, it's about to be very cold, and next thing you know, Houston and Dallas, Austin, they were covered in ice. So the people who already got the trucks, no big issue. You don't need to change the tires. Those tires are really, really thick, but the ones who got like the small sedans, the Corollas, the Corollas, the Toyota Corollas, or not the Nissan Maximas, but Nissan Altima, which is even smaller, or the quintessential Honda Civics. Yeah, you already feel it. Like, you cannot get out, and if you have to get out, it's very slow.
Yeah.
It can be too much, and then at least that environment is already prepared to have the chains.
Yeah.
There are no chains in Texas for the tires. What do you do?
You're stuck.
Exactly. I remember seeing people literally walking in the snow just to get some piece of bread because the supply chains were so disconnected. And also on the other side, I remember a lot of people actually went to the Hilton because there was no electricity, but the let's say the hotels were privileged to have this in order to have the tourist business going on. And you saw the people that literally they don't buy or do anything, all of a sudden they were on the bar or on the restaurant of the hotel because they had literally nothing else to do because of the environment. But yes, the snow and the ice on the road can be so devastating if you are not prepared.
Yeah.
That's true. So after the 2 weeks, you returned to Melbourne, and how many days were between the New Zealand trip and then going to Malaysia?
About a week, if I remember correctly.
Wow, only a week.
Yeah, so I had to pack everything in a couple of days. I had that amount of time to just say goodbye to the friends that I've made, told them to keep in touch, add everybody on Facebook, and hopefully when they come to Malaysia, we would catch up. And that's exactly what has happened today. We still keep in touch, and whenever they're in Malaysia, I'll be honest, I've never had the chance to go back to Australia ever since I graduated, but I do hope post this pandemic, as countries are slowly reopening, I hope I get to return the favor and visit them and say hi and check on things again.
So, to that Melbourne girl who helped Alia, thank you very much. If you're watching this video, connect with her as soon as possible. During this time that I had the privilege to work with you, we sit with Mark for lunch and we discuss about a faraway place some people call Hawaii.
Yeah.
And you were in Hawaii.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us what is Hawaii to you? Because some people will say, wait a second, is this woman traveling around the world? I guess she is. I guess that's her master plan. So how was Hawaii? Because it's also a tropical place, but you're from a tropical place. Which is the difference?
Yeah, so I can tell you a story of how I ended up in Hawaii. We have a local airline company called AirAsia. You may have heard of them. They expanded before the pandemic to many destinations around the world. In about 2019, I remember, 2018, yes. Sometime in 2018, they decided, we're going to open a new route from Malaysia to Hawaii with a stopover in Osaka in Japan. And I remember seeing that and I said, wow, there's a new flight route opening. And typically when AirAsia opens a new flight route, for the first few weeks, they will have a massive discount on the prices. So I remember the price they were offering was about return 2,000 over ringgit, which is really cheap. I think now if you try to fly to Hawaii, probably would take you like anywhere at least 5,000 to 6,000 ringgit just return trip, right?
I'm glad that you're saying the prices because guess what? Back and forth Kuala Lumpur to Cambridge, Massachusetts is around $600, which is 3,000 ringgits or a little more on discount. So when you're saying that something to go from Kuala Lumpur to Hawaii is like 2,000 ringgit,
That's cheap.
hey, you get a ticket.
Yeah.
You get a ticket.
So it was really cheap, but it was limited to like certain time slots of the day, which meant whilst I was working back then in Maxis, at 3 a.m. when they opened the ticket booking, I was there at 2:30 waiting to click that button and press refresh on the browser until I got those tickets. As I was planning the Hawaii trip to capitalize on these discounted tickets, I was telling my boyfriend, who's now my husband, I said, hey, there's this amazing offer to fly to Hawaii. Would you be interested in joining me? And he said, Hawaii? Where would anyone go to Hawaii? It sounds like one of those like hyped up destinations. Probably burn a lot of money there. I don't know what's in Hawaii. I don't think there's anything to do there. Boring. Why can't we just go to one of the tropical islands we have in Malaysia? It's cheaper and you can do the same things. It's still an island. And I said, don't prejudge. Open your mind to new places and just come along with me for the adventure. So in the end, he relented. And I ended up having my mom and sister interested to follow us as well, simply because at the time we were only dating, me and my boyfriend. And in Muslim culture, it's at least in Malaysia, it is not nice to go with a member of the opposite sex when you are not family members, because they just worried that you end up doing things you're not supposed to be doing. So in the end, my mom and sister tagged along, and I booked tickets for all the four of us. And so we went to Hawaii. What we saw there was one thing that's interesting. You'll end up at the main island. There are other islands that's worth exploring, places where you might see billionaires like Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos. They all have like houses in those extremely private parts of the island. To get to those islands would easily cost you more than the flight to get into Hawaii. So if you're rich and you have a lot of money, you go to quieter places with less tourists. If you want private and beautiful spots. If I'm not mistaken, when I was researching Hawaii, in those private islands were also the places where they recorded movies like Jurassic Park, just because of all the lush greeneries. So we stayed on the main island. One thing we learned was that their local tourism board is very smart. They created trams across across the whole of the main island, and they have this little map of the trams, and they color it in different lines. So there's a blue line that will take you to all the tourist attractions that have to do with water activities and aquariums to see fisheries and wildlife pertaining to the sea. They have a green one that's for people who like hiking and forests and mountain trekking. They have like a red one that's for shopping. So they're smart in that they've mapped out what you can do as a tourist based on your interests. and then you can either buy a tram ticket for that specific line, or you can just buy a tram ticket for the whole week that covers any single line. You can hop on and hop off, and that's what we did. We were there for about a week, enjoyed island life, went to some museums, understood again the cultural aspects. I'm a big fan of understanding the local culture whenever I go to a new place. So I always start with museums to understand, what was their local history. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Hawaii is the only place in the United States that has like a king and queen reigning there, and they also have palaces. Lord KameHameHa and his family. That was interesting to see how they requested for independence from the people who were taking over the country at the time. We tried, interestingly, a lot of the local food, one of which blew my mind, and I'm happy to see that we now have this in Malaysia. So there's something called mochi in Japan. It's like this little rice ball of sorts, and inside is flour. It's normally quite chewy and sweet. Think of it as a Japanese dessert. It's spelled Mochi if you want to Google it. But in Hawaii, they have like local retail outlets that sold their own brand. Honest to God, I don't remember the brand. I think it's called Bubbles maybe. But in that mochi, instead of chewy flour, they have ice cream, and it tastes delightful for $2. One mochi, pistachio, vanilla, chocolate, you name it, they got it, and they create it fresh in the store like every day. So Hawaii, beautiful, lots of nice food. Quite similar to New Zealand in the sense that they have their local people as well. Very big into surfing. Everybody loves surfing in Hawaii. And the beaches are beautiful.
Yeah, and it gives me shades of the fried ice cream that you can find in San Antonio. That you literally fry the ice cream and you have like a hard cover on the outside, but on the inside it's still cold and freshy. And when you talk about the mochi, the Hawaii version that they have there, it's like, oh, look at that! They have that thing right there. It's impressive. And you mentioned also King Kamehameha. For the Latin people and also some anime people that may watch this, yes, that's where the Dragon Ball identity got, because the famous Kamehameha technique is in honor of King Kamehameha, who, instead of doing more civil wars across the islands, decided to put all in one kingdom, and then decided to be part of the Union that become then the United States. So yes, it's so impressive. For only 2,000 ringgits, you went there and you saw the whole things right there. Like, literally, how many hours? Like 13 hours?
I remember to get to Osaka would be 8 hours, and then another 6 hours after, so it's about 14 hours flight.
Wow,
yeah.
14 hours. So 14-hour difference is like the same time same time zone difference from Kuala Lumpur to, let's say, it would be Denver right now, Denver, Colorado. So the time zone difference between Denver, Colorado and Kuala Lumpur is 14 hours, because 12 hours is Cambridge, Massachusetts, 13 hours would be Mexico DF or Houston, Texas, and then 14 hours, which is the mountain region, Denver, Colorado. That time of difference is the time that you invested to go there, and that's impressive. That's really impressive.
And it was so much fun because the stopover was in Osaka. We managed to just eat Japanese food while we were there. Having said that, there are a lot of Japanese people in Hawaii purely due to the heritage. A lot of them migrated over from Japan and decided, hey, I want to live a different life, an island life, and just relax in America.
That's very cool. Like, so different when you say the relaxing island life that can be experienced in Hawaii versus what you can find here in, like, let's say, the east side of Malaysia, west side of Malaysia, or even Singapore, because it's a different lifestyle, I have to say. And also the climate can be different, and for some times you can also find, even the food can be related in a certain way, but the identity remains, which is very important. We mentioned about food and we mentioned about experiences. My question is right now, what will be a recipe for life?
Wow, that's a deep question. A recipe for life. one thing, if I could share with everyone, beyond what I've already shared, find your purpose, find what you really, really want, and it doesn't have to be something static. We're humans, our desires change every season, right? Whatever it is, as long as you know that that's something you want and you really, really want it, make sure you honor your desires and do whatever it takes to attain that. In life, there will be a lot of people, a lot of naysayers who will tell you it cannot be done. No, out of the question, that's crazy, it doesn't make sense, why are you even thinking of doing something like this? If you let humans come up with 1,000,001 reasons not to do something, they will come up with 1,000,001 reasons or more not to do something. So if there's something that you really want, no matter how crazy it might sound, take the first step and continue taking those steps to progress towards it. Because if you really want something, you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out and you'll get it. Don't let someone tell you that you can't do something, because it's all here. It's all in your mind. If you believe you can do it, if you train yourself and build up those necessities that you need to get there, you will get there.
That's a very welcoming word, because people have been saying, yeah, you don't have the capital, you cannot do it. But in finance, it's not about if you have the cash, but the ability to get finance. Or let's say in simple English, when someone wants something, they find the money. So don't put those, you cannot do this, or it's too late. Those are excuses. So stop making excuses and execute. That would be maybe the best way, because it's on you to win the game. Which is important, which is always important, let's be honest. And right now, talking about games and talking about, you mentioned that you were playing games in the past.
Yeah.
Which was the game that you still have memories at this moment?
Right.
Because I've been also playing games as well, video games. So we are part of a generation that we experience the video games. So there is some gamer within us.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. I can name a few classic ones. Like, for example, I really loved playing Mario games. Any series in the Mario world. There's another one called Crash Bandicoot as well. I mean, I'm revealing my age by telling you guys all this, which I guess I already have in the early part of this discussion. But beyond that, I evolved from these sorts of games to RPGs, role-playing games. My first exposure into one of such games was called Final Fantasy. It is developed by a company called, before this, I think they were called Squaresoft. Squarespace or something like that, and now their new name is Square Enix. I've continued playing Final Fantasy since I started. I started with 8, and then I started playing 7, 6 in reverse, and I went on to 9, and until today, the last one I played was Final Fantasy 15 with the whole Choco Bros and all that. That was really, really fun. Those are console games. Mobile games, I tried Pokemon Go when it was all the rage. It was crazy in Malaysia when it launched.
Oh.
Every single one of my bosses in Maxis were in meetings, and you could see on their phones their fingers are like going up, so you know they're trying to catch a Pokemon. During like lunch breaks or breaks between meetings, there is a park near the office. Is in Kuala Lumpur City Centre, KLCC, near the Twin Towers, and you could see like even some managers are there just spinning and trying to catch, and I'm like, wow, like so many people, generations who are older than us who don't know a thing about Pokemon are starting to play Pokemon Go, right? Because it was fun and it was a social experience for them. Fast forward, the latest mobile game I'm currently playing is called Genshin Impact from a Chinese developer called Hoyo Labs. If any of you play, let me know. Drop your user IDs in the comments and I'll add you guys. So I talked about console games, I talked about mobile games. I occasionally play board games as well. If ever Fabian has a chance before he leaves Malaysia, while he's still around, do come and join me for a board game session. Me and my husband, we've collected, I think, close to 60 board games now in the shelves of our homes, because before the pandemic, we just kept playing board games as a way to meet new friends in the office. There were not many 20-somethings in our office back then. And that was also how me and my husband met, playing board games. shouting at each other, calling each other stupid, why are you doing that? And we became friends and more than friends. So yeah, I guess gaming surprisingly was a big part of my life.
Oh yes, that's true because it's not about to focus your energy in something that at the beginning can be a little difficult, but also how do you learn a skill, and then all of a sudden the game is not as difficult anymore. And there's been also like a subset of the gaming industry which is speed running.
Yeah.
I mean, you really value the talent of those people who put hours just to be in the competition and have world records on the like of it. I remember in the consoles, I used to play the classic Mario games, but also, let's say, Super Metroid or The Legend of Zelda, that has been so touching for so many people. And there is no shame to say that, hey, many men, tough looking men, they are touched by The Legend of Zelda. We were exposed to that, and there's nothing wrong with that. We were always wanted to see when Link is going to speak something because he cannot. I mean, on the design they cannot let him speak. Maybe one day they will let him, but it's always good to have that. It has not been very experienced in the, let's say, in the online gaming. My fault. Maybe I should go back and at least try to do that. Maybe I can open a Twitch account and start doing something there. But yes, it's always refreshing to see. I look at that, you like this game, I like this game, and then let's see who's better. And competition can be a little fierce, even when you are playing the Super Smash Bros. Series. That can be really tough. Things can be personal, but in the end, it's just, hey, I'm glad that we find a competition. We find somebody that was before the online gaming, because now it's like, which is your username? Let's see if we can tag and let's see if we can do something.
Yeah.
Which is very important.
And since you were talking about the topic of games, right? At least where I've been brought up in a very Asian conservative environment, again, many people used to think that games are a complete waste of time. But then in recent years, for those who go to business school, you might have heard of a theme now called gamification. So what I mean to say here is, regardless of whatever you do, whether it's a hobby or a side interest, again, lots of people will tell you it's a waste of time, this and that. But everything in life has a lesson for you, even playing games, which is what a lot of consultants and even now business people are starting to understand. Oh, how do I gamify my product? How do I make the customer's experience using my product fun and engaging without feeling like it's forced? To make it feel like it's a natural part of their everyday, to make work and product utilization fun. And that's something that you can learn by playing games. So gamers, don't let people tell you that what you're doing is a waste of time.
So you are saying that being good at games can lead you to be a good product manager?
Actually, yes, I believe so.
Yeah, check that out. And we are talking about this. Why? Because if you realize that in the tech industry, a lot of people want to be product managers because they realize that they can apply those skills not only on other industries but also to bring from early experiences in life, like gaming, for example. Number one. Number two, hey, those management consultants that are working overtime hours on slides, they want to find another way because they want to know another life is possible. And yes, tech hours are less taxing, but it's more into this kind of skills. And yes, number three, those investment bankers. Yeah, you like to play on Excel? You want to qualify for the Excel World Cup Championship because there is an Excel World Cup Championship nowadays. And you don't want to use a mouse because you want to sound that you're an OG and everything, but many hours, another life is possible. In tech, you can use those skills, you can be a product manager, product owner, the like of it. So, yes, another life is possible. And we are back because it's important to know how the product management itself can help the consultants and also the bankers. But because you had some experience in this, which has been the challenges you have been facing, not only in Malaysia but in other regions when we talk about product management?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. Something that I've observed during my time abroad and also now back in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. When we're talking about product management, I believe that the core essence of product management is, it comes down to some basic things. being able to prioritize, essentially knowing what to prioritize, and that comes with experience. But I think more importantly is how communication is actually the most important core skill set that anyone should aim to develop as a product manager. And I'll tell you why I feel personally that it is more challenging here in Asia. So in Asia and in Malaysia, there's this concept of power distance where organizations are typically a lot more hierarchical. You typically respect your seniors in your communities, whether they're the elderly or your parents, or even in the workplace, your senior employers, your senior management, etc. So then comes the part where, as a product manager, typically you don't really have a team per se, right? You're taking care of a product portfolio or a suite of products, and you're acting like the glue that brings together colleagues from finance to make sure that your numbers check out and it makes sense, you're actually profitable. Then you're talking about legal and compliance, that the processes that you're bringing forth to bring your product to the market, they are all above board, they're following regulatory practices within your communities, within your respective countries, and even in the industry that you're operating in. Then you have other colleagues from technology, your developers, your engineers, front and back end. You also have your folks from marketing, the business side, right? Your sales, marketing colleagues. Some of you may be in a company that's big enough to have your own strategy team. Everyone has different agendas. Everyone has different, I would say, goals and key performance indicators. So how do you now act as the glue to bring your product to life at the same time with zero ability to directly control what these other teams are focusing on and KPIs that they're focusing on? So you're acting like a chaperone, a true team player, trying to sort of understand what the different KPIs are and then aligning it back to your goal. And whilst you're working together, showing people that, hey, we're now all rowing in the same direction, and if you help me achieve this goal, here's how it will contribute back to your individual key performance indicators and how that will roll back up to the organization's goals as a whole. So I think that's really challenging. And I come back to communication because you don't own these people. They don't report to you. They don't need to respect you if you don't command it, if you don't earn that respect. So if you're really good at communication, soft skills, learning how to present concisely, clearly, and in different formats, some people prefer slides, some people prefer a short phone call, as long as you're able to then get into these individuals' good books and you put in effort from the very beginning and always trying to keep everyone updated and aligned on the progress of things, it becomes a lot easier to run future projects with them, to run future strategies with them, to come up with interesting initiatives that will require the help from these other team members. Because hey, the reality is one person cannot do anything alone. But if you're able to really pull the support of multiple people, you can and will eventually come up with a great product, including a really strong go-to-market strategy as well.
That's a very nice words, very wise words, because let's be honest, how many times we face it that we want to influence others but we don't have the name or the title, and let alone if that's your job. That can be challenging. Yeah. I remember some sports that you literally had to exert influence but you don't have a direct effect on the final outcome. It still requires such a huge skill, and I believe that that skill is something that you practice. So which have been the resources you find out were good to practice or to learn about it?
Right, so I think that's a great question. I think anyone, whether you are a seasoned product manager or even a new product manager, there is this one podcast as well as he runs a blog. So the person that I follow and I would recommend you to check out as well, his name is Lenny, Nenny Rachitsky, Rachitsky. If I remember correctly, he used to be the growth product manager for Airbnb, and he has all these amazing ideas for how he really scaled the company. And the beauty of it is he's not just an expert who knows how to do it, but he's a great teacher as well, because he's good at reflecting and pulling apart extracts of those learnings and then coming out and sharing templates that anyone out there can use and reuse and even apply in your day-to-day as a product manager. Many times when I meet product managers, especially new ones, there's this sense of like imposter syndrome. Like, oh, I'm new to tech, or I'm new in this industry, can I really do it? The good thing here is that you're not alone. Everyone at different points of their careers would typically come across certain times where you kind of have this self-doubt, wondering whether you're the right person for the role, whether you're the right person to champion this KPI, are you really the right person to drive this company or this product forward? But here's some advice. Don't bother spending too much like mental energy and capacity thinking about what if, should I have done this better, I could have done that better. It's fine. Any mistake or hiccups that you've perhaps overcome or actually experienced throughout your career, just take it as a learning for future events and then build on top of that. Personally, what helps me before I go to bed every night is before I sleep, I'll sort of like reflect on what happened throughout the whole day, from the beginning through to the end. Were there certain things that I did really well or that I observed from a colleague that did really well that I may want to start working on? And then I just write it down like a little notebook beside my bed. If you're not a writer, just grab your phone or a device and write it down. And then the next day, just actively try to practice that skill. Because if you can improve by at least 1% every day, compounded, you'll be a rock star at the end of every single year. So go ahead and try it. And check out Lenny Rachitsky's podcast and also blog. Really, really great place to learn as a product manager.
Yeah, those are good resources. Something that I've also been learning on my own was the blog of Alex Cowan, who did very nice drafts about how to do the hypothesis or jobs to be done, like the hypothesis, the driven development, and the likes of it. There was a time I remember that even to learn about how to do good product management was also about to be capital discipline. And I came across the essays of Paul Graham and the default alive calculator, because even when you have nice products or nice ideas, you need to know if those make sense. And then I realized, well, how much is your revenue, how much is your cost structure, how much is your percentage of growth per week or per month, because if you are a technology company, you really need to grow quicker, otherwise technology will eat you alive. 6 months of technology is already like the Stone Age. So that's why you had to go quicker. And I realized that the essays of Paul Graham has been important. And also, there was something that you mentioned when we were discussing the startup school. Because when I showed you those calculations, you were saying, oh yeah, those are from Y Combinator. But I believe you have something more than just a familiarity with Y Combinator. Is that true?
Yeah, so it's great that you brought up that point. Startup School was essentially how I initially also learned about Y Combinator. For those who are not yet aware of what Y Combinator is, it's a very popular, now global force to be reckoned with when it comes to investing and helping startups grow, especially from seed stage onwards. You might have heard of companies like Stripe, Airbnb, DoorDash. These are just a few of the companies that were incubated by the Y Combinator community in Silicon Valley. And funny story, my previous company, it's a B2B e-commerce startup called Droppy. We were also a Y Combinator alumni in winter 2020. That's when we got it. So how I experienced learning and hearing about the lessons from Y Combinator Startup School, we actually applied. This was back in, I think, 2019. And we were just curious to learn. And for those of you who have never experienced Startup School before, check it out. Just Google Startup School by Y Combinator. It's free to join. And they have all kinds of amazing learnings for you, from how to fundraise to how do you market your product without a budget. All kinds of learnings for the different roles in your company, even for solo entrepreneurs. I do recommend checking it out, if not for the lessons, for the networks that you can connect people with. So for us, we applied and we got in that 1 year where Y Combinator accidentally accepted a whole bunch of people in Startup School. We were one of them. We got an acceptance email, and then like a few hours later, we got an apology email saying, oh, there was a glitch in our system. We accidentally accepted too many people. And then a few hours after that, they said like, oh, well, it's okay. We've already sent everyone an acceptance email. Let's just allow everyone to come into startup school for this 1 year. So I think ever since that year, they started opening up and diversifying their pool of startups that they invest in, and looking a lot in Asia right now as well, and also in the UAE and the rest. But suffice to say, when Fabian talked about default alive, Paul Graham's theories on how do you ensure longevity for your company, for your startup, without solely relying on just fundraising money, right? So I remember that when we joined startup school, every week we would sort of have to like document our progress to say what was the hypothesis or experiment that we ran for the week. And the goal, if you want to aim to become a Y Combinator or a high growth startup, is always to aim for at least 5 to 7% of growth every single week. If you want to be a really great startup, you want to aim for like 10% week on week growth. And that's really what we did. We tried, we tested, we sort of filled in the little online diary that we had to submit. They even broke us into, I remember, team discussions. So you could meet like startups and founders from all around the world, and we'll just meet once a week for just a half an hour, and everyone just goes through like, hey, this was what I learned this week. My company is in the B2B scene, and this is our market segment, and this is our experiment, and this was what failed or what we achieved. So we then also learned that the startup community in America and also abroad, they're not shy talking about their failures. Here in Asia, it's a little bit different. Like, people shy away from talking about their failures. Everyone wants to talk about what they've done that succeeded, but not many people want to talk about their failures. And it's a shame, because you actually learn a lot more in your failures and the failures of others if you can share it, because then, number one, you don't repeat it. Number two, you spread the gospel so that no one else makes that mistake as well. And as a startup community, you guys grow stronger, faster, because everyone is sharing the knowledge together. So that was an interesting experience that we had, joining startup school and then eventually being part of the Winter 2020 Y Combinator investee company. Yeah.
So, you got exclusive here. Alia has been a YC alumni. So, check that out. It's very impressive. And talking about things that are impressive, right now we realize that you have been experiencing a journey that not only goes across time but also across a space. And nowadays we have something here in Malaysia that is like the independence. They call it Merdeka, right?
Yeah, Merdeka.
But that's a literal translation. Merdeka means independence, but it can mean something else for everyone else. So I need to ask you, because you are Malay, what Merdeka means to you?
Well, that's a very deep question. Personally, Merdeka to me, it means freedom, not just independence from foreign forces that's previously taken over your home country, for example, in the literal sense of it. But I think more in terms of freedom from everything that you've held as a way of thinking or as a way of life that has gone unchallenged just because perhaps you grew up in a small town and everyone around you has told you this is A, this is B. But have you ever questioned, what is A? Why is A? Why is A not B, right? And personally, when I reflect, Merdeka to me, it makes me really think about how do you free yourself from preconceived notions, from preconceived stereotypes. And I'll give you a simple example. As a Asian person growing up in a country like Malaysia, the style of Asian parenting is very strict, very guided, very much, go to school, and after school you have extracurricular activities, be it sports or ballet or music, piano class, what have you, right? And the goal of the average parent in Asia, in Malaysia, is always about how do I position my child for them to put their best foot forward to achieve success in life. And success in life is defined as, okay, when you finish school, you go to university. When you finish university, you come back, you graduate, and you join the workforce as either a professional worker, right? A doctor, a lawyer, engineer, or an accountant. If you're one of those, you're deemed a successful child. And I think that's a very narrow way of looking at things. I think now, at least in even in Malaysia, right, and in Asia, this traditional method of thinking of success has really flipped on its head. I think nowadays, if you walk up to someone who is in primary school or even in high school, right, in Malaysia, and you ask them, hey, what do you want to be? I guarantee you a lot of them will now say things like, I either want to be a startup entrepreneur, right? I want to run my own company, or they'll tell you, I want to be a YouTuber, right? I want to be a TikTok star, a content creator. And these are things that I feel it's liberating to see that children nowadays and the youth nowadays are always challenging what preconceived notions the previous generation had. And yeah, to come back to Fabian's question, really, Merdeka to me is just freeing yourselves from other people's definition of you and your life, and you take the reins of your life. You decide what success means to you. You decide how to take learnings from your failures and don't give up and just continue doing whatever it is that makes you happy in life. And I hope that that is a notion that more people in Asia and even in Malaysia start to think about as we go into the Merdeka holidays.
That sounds beautiful. I couldn't even say any better because it's very encompassing. It's like it has so many layers to understand and even to experience. I really feel thankful that you are sharing this with us. Now I need to ask you, because you have been doing so much for so long. What are you doing now? Like what are you gonna be? What are you working towards the future? Because we literally watched what has been going on. What are you going in the near future? Are you publishing a book? Are you publishing something else?
Interesting question. Do you want to wait for the noise to go down? Yeah. Okay, so Fabian wants to know where am I going in life? What's next, basically, as Alia, right? For me, I've always been interested in dabbling with food. Anything to do with food, storytelling through food, coming up with experiences and engaging people through food. I'm a big foodie myself. My husband and I love cooking. We like experimenting. We even have a cooking channel on YouTube that I think we only have like 2 episodes or so, just experimenting on cooking vegetarian meals, putting a spin on typical meat-heavy dishes in Malaysia and putting that vegetarian spin on it. So I think where I'll hit food will be probably an area where I want to dabble more in. Maybe we'll run a business, a side hustle to do with food. But at the same time, I also am very passionate about giving back to the local community. So I think it'll probably be a mix of both. Perhaps a way to get my business, my side hustle in food off the ground, at the same time figuring out that a way to give back to community through food as well. So let's see what happens. Even I don't know yet.
Yeah, those are very remarkable ideas, because hey, the future can be very far away or it can be very close. And I believe so many people will be watching those, among them young girls, possibly, and they may be saying, hey, I am like her, but they will need some encouragement or some kind of advice. My question is, what piece of advice will you give to your younger self?
Ooh. What piece of advice I would give to my younger self? I would say, if I got the opportunity to meet with my younger self, I would tell her to be brave, to be bold, to always try to champion what you think is right, to never be afraid of going out of your comfort zone. There will be 1,000,001 people telling you all kinds of excuses and reasons why you shouldn't do something. It's either because you're a girl or you're a Malay or you're a Muslim and you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. But I think, again, go back to your purpose, be comfortable in your own skin and finding your own purpose, and don't let anyone define what happiness means to you. The only one who can define what happiness is and what success is to you is you. So if there's something that you really, really want with all your heart, don't hesitate. Just figure out a way for you to get one step closer with each passing day, because eventually you're gonna get there. So that will be my advice to my younger self.
I couldn't even find a better way to close this episode. How can people find you?
Okay. If any of you have LinkedIn, you can find me as Alia Alsagoff, ALIA space ALSAGOFF. You'll see my picture there. There'll probably be like this teddy bear ear in my background. Now that I tell you what it is, you can probably now guess. It's the ear of Rila Kumar Bear. So if you find that profile, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to share advice and give you top tips if there's anything I can help you with. And if you're ever in Malaysia, drop me a note. We can go out for coffee sometime.
Thank you very much for doing this, Alia.
Cheers.
So, I will really take these words and take these messages and try to practice as much as possible from now on. And for people who is right there, please stay safe. See ya when I see ya. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.
Now.
Let's see.
Now we did it. Now we did it.